Hi, welcome back. Certainly glad you could join me today. Sorry about that. I had something in my throat. Now, before proceeding, I'd like to give a big old thank you to everyone for helping the channel pass 100 subscribers. It truly means the world. Now, let's go through the software being used here. For animation, I have Krita. For audio, Audacity. And for editing, I use DaVinci Resolve. Now, don't worry about having the exact programs listed here. So long as you have tools with which to animate, record and manipulate audio, and edit video, you should be just fine. Also, keep in mind that I am a self-taught animator. What I'll be showing here is my own practice, and as such, may be seen as unconventional. Lastly, whilst I will be sharing some tips, this video is an overview, not a tutorial. As such, I'm expecting you to be familiar with the basic features of whichever programs you're using. Moving right along, we begin by sketching the keyframes of our little cartoon. But since I can't help myself, I already finished the entirety of the rough animation. But don't worry, I'm not gonna leave you hanging. I'll quickly go over a few things to keep in mind. Firstly, I recommend sketching in multiple colors to reduce visual clutter. I personally use red, blue, and green, with green being what I typically use for backgrounds, but you pick whatever you find is easiest on your eyes. Secondly, have the subject take on a pose that has the viewer anticipate the action. Doing so brings out the exaggerated quality many have come to expect from moving illustrations. Moreover, draw only what is needed. Avoid redrawing the entirety of the subject between frames if at all possible. Instead, try to only redraw a few aspects of the subject. Notice how, for this frame, I simply took a previous frame and changed it slightly? Splitting the subject between multiple layers often makes this easier. When applicable, reuse entire frames. See how both clapping frames are identical? Expand on these techniques by flipping earlier drawings. Side note, if you're going to flip a frame, circle whatever you're going to flip with the lasso tool so that it doesn't affect all other frames. And make sure you flip it by going to the Layer tab instead of the Image tab, as the Image tab will affect the entire project, whilst the Layer tab only affects a specific layer or group you have selected. Another way to cut on time is to leave out certain details from the sketch, instead only adding them during the inking phase. As you can see, I elected not to draw the face on my sketch, though I actually advise against this, as it caused me to struggle a bit. Instead, I recommend doing this with simpler details, such as the hairs on someone's arm. The only reason I didn't add the face is because my little teddy bear avatar is so simple that there was nothing else to leave out for the sketch. Once you have all your keyframes, draw the in-betweens. Make sure to keep in mind the techniques from before, and try to use as few frames as you can get away with. In addition, having the subject overshoot a pose for a split second adds a bouncy quality to the motion. Now we move on to the inks. There's very little to say aside from keeping your lines clean, but do remember that much like the sketch, splitting the inks amongst several layers and flipping can often save time. Though this part of the process requires the least amount of explanation, it is often the longest part of animating. With the inks all done, we can begin coloring. Aside from the obvious like filling in the gaps after bucket tooling an area, I recommend keeping your colors well organized. Personally, I split all of my colors into their own layers, with my base tones together in a group, and my shadows and highlights in another. On top of that, I have a particular way of naming my color layers, which I'd like to show you with an example. Here we have an orange ball. Predictably, I'd name its base tone layer Orange. Now we added shadow and highlight colors. Note that I've elected to use red to represent the shadow and yellow for the highlight. With that in mind, you may be inclined to name their layers red and yellow respectively. However, I find it more helpful to name these layers Orange capital S and Orange capital H as displayed on the left hand side of the screen. Such a practice makes keeping track of your layers within the animation timeline easier. When working with a pure white highlight shared amongst multiple colors, I recommend naming the layer White Highlight or just Highlight. When recording audio, I recommend having a period of silence at the beginning and/or end of the recording session so that noise reduction may be applied, thus removing the quiet yet pervasive sounds of ceiling fans, computer fans, AC units, or whatever else may produce endless drones and hums within your recording space. Once recording is finished, splice together all of the best takes to create the final result. Before editing, we have to export everything we've made. For our audio, have it exported in the .wav format for the best sound. As for the animation files, export the animated subjects separately from their backgrounds. Export the animated subjects in the .gif format as it supports invisible backgrounds. After that, export the still backgrounds as simple PNGs. Now, every project is going to be different in terms of editing, so I'll only go through the common techniques, beginning with keyframing. With keyframing, we can slide our subjects across the screen like this, or this. The first example in particular illustrates why we export our subjects separately from the backgrounds. Next, take advantage of adjustment clips. Adjustment clips affect all assets below them, allowing for effects to be applied to entire scenes. Keyframing the zoom and position of an adjustment clip can make it act as a faux camera. The illusion of a camera can be further enhanced by blurring things in the background or foreground. Lastly, here's a piece of troubleshooting for DaVinci Resolve I'd like to give you. If your project is filled with keyframes and it comes out glitchy looking after you've exported it, go to the Deliver page, set keyframes to every 1 frames, and then add it to the render queue and render it. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for watching the video. And once again, thank you to those who helped the channel pass 100 subscribers. It genuinely feels unreal. And if you made it this far, do consider leaving a like and sharing the video, as well as subscribing with the notification bell on if you haven't already. Thank you.